Welcome to Science for Sleep, where your curiosity is cradled gently, and every question becomes a soft journey into the stars, the cells, and everything in between. Tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and the world around you quiets down, we invite you to drift into one of the most quietly powerful questions of all. Can the Earth run out of oxygen? You breathe it without thinking. It fills your lungs, fuels your blood, and feeds the world. But what if the air, this invisible ocean all around us, began to change? Don't worry, we're not here to alarm you. We're here to soothe your mind with real science, gentle stories, and a calm unraveling of the truth. Because the story of oxygen is ancient, poetic, and far more fascinating than fear. So settle in, let your breath slow, and together, let's follow the quiet trail of the air we breathe, from the first living cells to the forests, oceans, and future skies. You breathe it in without effort. Cool or warm, dry or humid, it enters you gently, without sound. You don't have to ask for it. The air is simply there, every moment, every breath, as natural as your own heartbeat. But what is this invisible thing around you? Close your eyes and imagine this. You are floating gently just above the earth. The sky stretches out in all directions, but it is not empty. You are suspended in a vast, weightless sea, not of water, but of gases, a silent ocean wrapped around the entire planet. You are drifting in it right now, even as you lie still. This ocean is the atmosphere, Earth's soft, protective blanket. It begins at the ground beneath your feet and extends upward for hundreds of miles, thinning as it rises, until it becomes space itself. Yet most of it, the part that matters to your body and your breath, lies within the first few miles above the surface, a layer so thin that, if Earth were an apple, the atmosphere would be the skin. And still, in that skin, life happens. Take another breath. Right now, that breath is mostly nitrogen, about 78%, odorless, silent, stable. It doesn't react much. It's like a quiet guest at a dinner party, always present, rarely noticed. Next comes oxygen, around 21%. This is the star of the show, the breath behind your thoughts, the fuel for your every movement. Oxygen enters your lungs, slips into your blood, and lights up your cells like lanterns. Every blink, every word, every heartbeat relies on it. Then there's argon, a noble gas that makes up less than 1%, and carbon dioxide, only about 0.04%, but powerful in ways you'll come to understand. There's water vapor, too, drifting in and out depending on the weather, the place, the moment. The atmosphere is not just one thing. It's a blend, a symphony. Gases swirling together in proportions so finely balanced that the difference of a fraction, a few molecules per million, can shift the fate of species. But the star of tonight's story is oxygen. Not just the gas, but the journey it takes. Because oxygen doesn't just float around, waiting for you. It moves, changes, disappears, returns. It is created, consumed, and recycled in rhythms older than language. Picture the sky again, not as empty blue, but as something full of movement and matter. A single breath of air contains roughly 10 sextillion molecules. That's a 1 followed by 22 zeros. And every one of those tiny pieces is part of something bigger. They collide, combine, and drift. The air you breathe tonight might hold atoms exhaled by whales in the Arctic, monks in the Himalayas, trees in the Amazon. You are never breathing alone. Now, float down gently. Let your feet touch the ground. Look around. Even in the dark, the air is alive, not with sound or light, but with a delicate dance of gases. Trees inhale and exhale. So do you. Birds breathe, foxes breathe, mushrooms in the soil and plankton in the sea, all drawing from the same invisible reservoir. It's easy to forget the air is even there, because it doesn't press against your skin or shimmer in the light, but its presence is constant. If it were suddenly taken away, even for a minute, your body would know. Cells would begin to panic. Muscles would clench. The brain would plead for breath. That's how closely life is tied to this unseen ocean. And yet, air is not a fixed thing. It wasn't always like this. There was a time, long, long ago, when the Earth's sky held almost no oxygen at all. When the atmosphere was harsh, toxic, lifeless. When no creature, no tree, no breath existed. That will be tomorrow's chapter. But for now, let's return to this moment. You lying still, the gentle rhythm of your breath. Feel how the air meets you without force. It enters, fills, nourishes, and leaves. A quiet cycle that's been repeating since your very first breath. It's humbling to think that this invisible ocean, so delicate and so vast, cradles all of life. From the flight of an insect to the movement of clouds, from the rustle of a forest to the rise and fall of your chest, it is all carried by air. And the oxygen in that air, the very part that your body so dearly depends on, didn't always exist. It had to be made, not in a factory, not in a storm, but in something smaller, something ancient, something that learned how to turn sunlight into breath. You will meet those first oxygen makers in the next chapter, tiny architects who, billions of years ago, began to change the world one molecule at a time. But for now, let yourself drift in this invisible sea. Let the air surround you, hold you, carry you, and know that every breath you take is part of something vast and beautiful. A quiet ocean in the sky, where oxygen still dances, waiting for you. Long before you were here to inhale it. Before trees danced in the wind. Before animals stretched and yawned. Before even the oldest fish dreamed of swimming through currents of water. The earth held its breath. Not because it was waiting, but because it simply didn't know how to breathe. The early Earth was not the world you recognize. It was young, volcanic, and wild. A rocky ball wrapped in swirling gases that would choke your lungs in a heartbeat. Hydrogen, methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide filled the sky, creating a thick and murky atmosphere. It wasn't empty, but it was lifeless in the way we understand life now. No blue sky. No birdsong, no scent of rain or bloom, and certainly no oxygen. But somewhere, deep in a shallow, sunlit sea, life stirred. Not the kind of life you can see with your eyes. Not a creature with arms or eyes or voice. No, this life was simpler, microscopic, silent, patient. These were cyanobacteria. Tiny blue-green cells floating freely in the warm, mineral-rich waters. They didn't walk, they didn't swim. They simply floated and fed on sunlight. Imagine them as little solar panels with a hunger for light. They captured sunlight and used it to rearrange water and carbon dioxide into something new, something magical. They made sugar, fuel for themselves, and in the process, they released something else. Something they didn't need. Something they simply let go of. Oxygen. At first, it was nothing more than a byproduct. A trace in the water. A whisper in the sea. But oxygen, once born, doesn't disappear. It lingers. It builds. It waits. These ancient cells didn't know they were changing the planet. They didn't know they were rewriting the story of life. But as the centuries passed, slowly, steadily, the seas filled with more of this strange new gas. And eventually, the oceans couldn't hold it all. So oxygen rose. Bubble by invisible bubble. It climbed into the sky. The earth began to exhale. You might imagine this moment as a celebration, a triumph of life. But it wasn't, not at first. Because oxygen is powerful. It reacts. It burns. It doesn't just give life. It can also take it away. To many of the microbes living at that time, oxygen was poison. They had evolved in a world without it. They didn't know how to handle its energy, how to survive its fire. And so, as oxygen spread across the planet, many forms of life vanished. This quiet, microbial revolution became known to scientists as the Great Oxidation Event. Roughly 2.4 billion years ago, the Earth experienced its first mass extinction, not with fire or flood, but with breath. It was the first planetary consequence of photosynthesis, and the first hint that life, even small life, can change everything. But not all perished. Some adapted. Some evolved new ways to live with oxygen, to use it not as poison, but as power. Because oxygen, when tamed, is energy. It allows cells to breathe more efficiently, to take food and unlock far more power from it than ever before. Oxygen is like fire, held gently in the palm. And so, with time, new life emerged. Complex life, the kind that could move, grow, and specialize. Life that could become multicellular, that could stretch toward the light or dig into the mud. Eventually, the kind of life that could crawl, walk, think, and one day wonder about breath itself. But back then, in those still ancient oceans, the cyanobacteria kept working, unaware of the change they had caused. They floated on, dividing slowly, glowing with purpose under the sun. They built layers, called stromatolites, stone-like mounds made of minerals and time. You can still see them today in places like Shark Bay, Australia. Living fossils, not just reminders of the past, but storytellers of our planet's breath. So tonight, as you lie here, lungs rising and falling, know this. Every breath you take is a gift written long ago. Not by trees, not yet. Not by flowers or forests or fields, but by tiny blue-green architects of air. Your breath began in the ocean, and as oxygen rose higher into the sky, it changed not only life, but the very chemistry of Earth. Iron in the oceans began to rust. You can see it now in red rock layers that stripe ancient cliffs. Geological records of Earth's first exhale. Before there was air to breathe, there was art being etched in stone. By the quiet oxidation of the deep, it would still take over 1 billion years before oxygen became common enough to fill the air as it does today. 1 billion years of slow accumulation, of small changes that piled into something extraordinary. Patience, written into every molecule. And as oxygen gathered, the sky began to change. Ozone formed, a protective layer made of 3 oxygen atoms. shielding the Earth from the harshest ultraviolet rays of the sun. This shield allowed life to crawl from the oceans to the land, without being scorched by radiation. Oxygen didn't just allow life to breathe, it allowed life to expand. So much from something so small, so silent. Now, think again about those floating cells. No eyes, no voice, no mind. And yet, they altered the air, the oceans, the rocks. In the future, you are here, because they once bloomed under ancient sun. They are still here, in oceans, in ponds, in wet rocks. They still breathe sunlight and share the byproduct with the world. Photosynthesis is not a relic, it is a living song, one that continues every morning when the sun returns, one that fills forests and seaweed, fields of grass and algae films, a song that hums in every breath you take. And so, as you drift toward sleep, you might imagine the slow rise of oxygen as a kind of lullaby, one written not in notes or words, but in chemistry and time, a song sung by tiny, tireless beings who turned light into air, and in doing so, opened the door for everything that would come after, including you. And tomorrow, we will follow that air, to forests and oceans, to green leaves and salty waves, to the places where Earth still breathes. Because even now, oxygen is not guaranteed. It is made every day by life itself. Let's drift there next, into the rhythm of the breathing Earth. You close your eyes, and time begins to fall away. The present softens. The clock unwinds. You're no longer here, lying in your bed, listening to the breath within your lungs. You are floating back, far back, more than 2 billion years into the deep past of Earth. There is no grass beneath your feet, no trees stretched to the sky. In fact, there are no feet yet, no eyes, no spines. The Earth is quiet, its surface barren and strange. Volcanoes simmering, oceans swirling in a hazy twilight. And the air? It's not the air you know. You breathe deeply now, imagining that ancient sky, but it holds almost no oxygen at all. Instead, it's filled with methane and carbon dioxide, gases that would choke your lungs and darken the sun. Yet in the shallow seas, something stirs. Something small. Something brilliant. Tiny organisms, cyanobacteria, live in colonies across the ocean surface. They're no bigger than dust, but they hold a secret power, photosynthesis. With nothing more than sunlight and water, they begin to make oxygen, and they release it slowly, invisibly, into the air. At first, nothing changes. The oxygen they make is soaked up, swallowed by minerals, trapped in iron, bound in stone. But the cyanobacteria do not stop. They keep producing breath by breath, century after century. And then something shifts. The sponge-like earth becomes saturated. The iron rusts red, the rocks fill up, and now there is nowhere else for the oxygen to go. So it stays in the air. It gathers, quietly, steadily, turning the sky into something new. You may think of oxygen as life-giving, and for you it is, but not for the life of that time. Back then, most of Earth's microbes had evolved to thrive without oxygen. They were anaerobic, meaning oxygen was not a gift, but a poison. As the atmosphere changed, these ancient forms began to die, slowly, massively. An extinction like no other, silent and global. This is what scientists call the Great Oxygen Catastrophe, a name that feels heavy even now, because it wasn't caused by fire or asteroid, but by the slow blooming of air, life poisoned by breath itself. Imagine that. The very element that fills your chest now was once deadly. As you drift in this thought, it becomes clear how strange and delicate Earth's balance really is. How even something good, in excess or in the wrong time, can undo what came before. And yet, from that unraveling came something beautiful. As oxygen continued to build, Earth's atmosphere began to change in profound ways. The sky lightened. The ozone layer formed, a shield against harmful ultraviolet rays. Now, for the first time, life could safely dream of reaching the surface. And with oxygen came energy, new ways to grow, to move, to become. You might not realize it, but oxygen is more than air. It's a kind of chemical currency, a fuel for life's engine. When cells breathe oxygen, they unlock far more energy than they could before. And so life grew more complex, more ambitious, more alive. The catastrophe, in time, became creation. New organisms emerged, ones that could use this oxygen, thrive in it, evolve within it. They were your ancient cousins, far removed and microscopic. But they were the ancestors of everything with breath, including you. And so, what began as destruction became a doorway. Out of mass extinction came evolution. Out of toxic change came potential. As you lie here, your body resting quietly, your breath rising and falling like waves, you hold that ancient story inside you. Every inhale a connection to those first cyanobacteria. Every exhale a reminder that life has always adapted, sometimes through pain, sometimes through beauty. You don't need to remember every detail. You can let the science wrap around you like a warm blanket. Just know that even the worst changes in Earth's history brought forth new forms of wonder. The oxygen that once killed eventually gave rise to everything you love. Even now, the balance continues. Tiny organisms in the ocean still make oxygen, and green leaves still offer their breath to the wind. But balance, you'll learn, is never permanent. It tilts and sways, as all living systems do. And so the question begins to whisper again. What keeps that balance intact today? Who are the great oxygen makers now? And could the breath of the planet, the very air you trust, still disappear? Let's step softly into the forest and the sea, to listen to Earth's lungs at work. Let's find the ones still breathing for you. You breathe in, slowly. Feel the air slip past your nose. Fill your lungs and dissolve into your blood, without effort, without thought. It feels personal, intimate, like the world made this air just for you. But the truth is even more beautiful. You are not alone in this breath. You never have been. All around you, across the skin of the earth, something extraordinary is always happening. The planet itself is breathing, not in the way your chest rises and falls, but in vast, quiet rhythms of light and life. Let's walk now, gently, slowly, into the green. The forest stands still at first glance, like a photograph. Trees tower, unmoving. But look longer, and you'll notice a slow dance. Leaves tremble with light. Branches stretch. Roots hum underground. This is no static place. It is alive, and it is exhaling. Each tree is a quiet engine. With sunlight on its leaves and carbon dioxide in the air, it makes sugar to grow and oxygen as a gift, or perhaps as a byproduct. You might call it photosynthesis, But here, it feels more like alchemy. Light becomes life. Breath becomes forest. During the day, when the sun is high, the forest is a net producer of oxygen. It floods the air with it, enough for animals to run, for insects to buzz, for you to stand here now and breathe without fear. Every tree is a silent generator. Every leaf is a tiny lung. But it's not just the trees. The undergrowth, ferns, mosses, and low shrubs play their part. Even the forest floor breathes. Beneath your feet, roots partner with fungi, exchanging sugars and signals in a whispering underground network. And here too, oxygen dances in and out of soil, fueling the tiny lives that wriggle unseen. There is something ancient in this rhythm. Trees have been exhaling oxygen for over 400 million years. Long before cities or cars, before even birds took to the skies, forests were shaping the air. They changed the atmosphere itself, making it possible for creatures like you to exist. You pause, listening. The forest doesn't speak, not in words, but it communicates in patterns, in seasons, in leaf fall, in the warm scent of pine and soil. And in its own way, it reminds you, the air you breathe is shared. Now, close your eyes, just for a moment, and when you open them, you're somewhere else entirely, standing on the shore, the forest behind you. Ahead, the ocean stretches out like breath held in. Let's step closer. The waves greet you with a hush, rising and falling like the earth's chest in slumber. You may not see it yet, but beneath this surface lies another forest, one not made of trees, but of light-drinking plankton. Phytoplankton, tiny, drifting life forms no bigger than a speck of dust. And yet, together, they create more than half the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. Yes, more than all the forests combined. These oceanic plants, so small you could line thousands across a fingernail, capture sunlight just like leaves do. They photosynthesize, blooming in great underwater meadows wherever light can reach. And when they bloom, they breathe out oxygen into the sea and into the air above it. In spring and summer, great swells of these invisible plants flourish. Satellites from space can even detect them, tracing green and blue spirals in the sea, a planetary fingerprint of life and light. They are fed by nutrients that rise from deep currents. They are shaped by temperature, by season, by the wind. Their abundance waxes and wanes, and so does the amount of oxygen the oceans give back. Fish swim through these invisible forests. Whales dive through them. And all the while, phytoplankton are quietly making the atmosphere livable, oxygenating not just the sea, but the sky. You inhale again. The breath feels richer, knowing who it comes from. It's easy to forget how thin the line of breathable air around our planet really is, a fragile skin, stretching barely 10 miles above your head. All the oxygen you've ever breathed, all the oxygen that any animal has ever used, exists in that delicate band. Forests and oceans work together to maintain it, but it is not a one-way process. Oxygen is constantly created and consumed. Plants release it, animals take it in. Fires consume it. Microbes in soil and sea use it to break down matter. Even plants at night, when there's no sunlight, consume a little oxygen themselves. It is a dance, not a donation. And because it is a balance, it can shift. When forests are cut or burned, their oxygen production drops. When ocean waters warm and stratify, layering like oil on water, fewer nutrients rise to feed the phytoplankton. Fewer blooms, fewer breaths. Yet despite human impacts, the system is vast and has inertia. It doesn't collapse overnight. The forests still breathe. The oceans still hum. But they are not infinite. You walk a little further along the shore. Somewhere, just beyond the horizon, the ocean is breathing for you, exhaling into the sky that gently rests on your skin. And far inland, deep in the Amazon or under the Canadian pines, trees quietly exchange sunlight for life. They don't ask for thanks. They don't need applause. But without them, the air would shift. The balance would tip. And so, when you breathe, you participate in something ancient and ongoing. A planetary inhalation and exhalation that connects the forests, the oceans, and you. Tonight, you rest not just on a bed, but within the breath of a living world. A world that makes the air you need, not as a favor, but as part of its own rhythm. So breathe gently, with awareness, with gratitude. Let your chest rise and fall like the waves. Let your thoughts drift like leaves through the canopy. And as you soften into sleep, another question gently arises. What happens when fire, natural or human-made, begins to shift this balance? What if the things we burn begin to breathe for us in reverse? Let's explore that together in the quiet warmth of the next chapter. You sit quietly, eyes half closed, as the thought of fire flickers gently in your mind. Not a fire that roars or devours, but a slow, patient flame. One that crackles softly, warm and rhythmic, casting long shadows on the walls of human history. Fire is ancient. It was among the first tools your ancestors tamed, coaxed from spark and ember. With fire, we cooked, gathered, shaped metal, and told stories beneath starlit skies. It gave light in the darkness and warmth in the cold. But fire is also hungry, not for wood alone, but for something far more invisible: oxygen. Take a breath. That air in your lungs, about 21% of it is oxygen. The rest is mostly nitrogen, with tiny amounts of carbon dioxide, argon, and other gases. But it's that oxygen, the quiet chemical, that fuels not just your body, but every flame that burns on Earth. When you light a candle, strike a match, or start a campfire, what you're really doing is triggering a delicate chemical dance. Oxygen rushes in to meet fuel, wood, oil, gas, and heat opens the door. In return, fire gives off light, heat, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. A transformation, not destruction. So, where does all this fire lead? Let your thoughts drift to the wide world beyond your room. Picture forests burning in distant lands, smoke coiling into the sky like ghostly rivers. Picture engines rumbling, power plants humming, furnaces glowing. Every day, across the globe, we burn, not just for heat or comfort now, but for energy, for movement, for the complex web of modern life. Wood once fueled our world, then coal, then oil. Now natural gas and refined fuels carry us forward. These fossil fuels, born from ancient forests and oceans long turned to stone, are like time capsules of stored energy. And to release that energy, we burn them. In doing so, we feed oxygen into flames that turn solid earth into gas and ash. And here lies the balance. Every flame removes oxygen from the air and releases carbon dioxide in its place. It's a trade, a chemical agreement. Burn enough, and the oxygen dips. But here's the comforting truth. Earth's oxygen supply is massive. You won't run out tonight, nor tomorrow. But the question isn't just about quantity, it's about rhythm. You see, nature once kept a slow, harmonious breath. Plants breathed in carbon dioxide and exhaled oxygen. Animals did the opposite. Forests grew, died, decayed, locking carbon away underground, slowly, over millions of years. And this cycle kept the air steady, like a pendulum ticking gently through time. But then came us. We found the buried forests, the coal and oil, and we burned them fast. What took nature eons to store, we release in decades. And the oxygen we consume in the process doesn't disappear, but it transforms into carbon dioxide, into water, into molecules that no longer feed your breath. So, is this change dangerous? Could burning too much truly shift the oxygen balance? Let your mind drift to what scientists have found. Since the early 1990s, they've been measuring the amount of oxygen in the air with incredible precision. And yes, it's declining. Slowly, gently, about 0.03% over the past few decades. Not enough to notice with your lungs, but measurable all the same. That small decline is due to fossil fuel combustion, our vast engines, factories, and fires nibbling at the balance. The good news? Oxygen makes up such a large portion of the atmosphere that even this decline is nowhere near dangerous for now. There's still plenty to breathe. But the decline reminds us, the system is not infinite. The balance can shift, and it already has, just a little. Now, think of forests again. Forests are more than just shade and scenery. They are living oxygen factories. Through photosynthesis, trees and plants inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen, the opposite of fire. The Amazon rainforest alone produces about 20% of the world's oxygen each year. But even that oxygen doesn't simply accumulate. It gets used by animals, microbes, even the trees themselves. And as forests are cleared, burned, logged, or degraded, that balance falters again. Fewer trees mean less carbon absorbed, less oxygen released. Fires consume what forests once gave. It's a kind of seesaw, isn't it? One side is nature's breath, calm, cyclical, forgiving. The other is our flame, swift, relentless, fueled by need and motion. And somewhere in between, you sit tonight, breathing in the soft, invisible result of ancient balances. But there's something quietly powerful in this awareness. To see oxygen not just as something you take, but as something shaped by choices, by energy, by flame. The truth is, oxygen isn't running out anytime soon, but the systems that maintain it, forests, oceans, living ecosystems, those can be wounded. The danger isn't sudden suffocation, but slow imbalance. Not a vanishing, but a reshaping. And reshaping can go both ways. Picture wind farms turning gently in golden fields. Picture solar panels soaking in the sun. Picture cities wrapped in green, walls of moss, rooftops of trees. Picture fewer fires, cleaner air, the same balance, but tipped with intention. You are part of the fire, but you can also be part of the forest. The balance isn't just chemical, it's human. And as you exhale now, slowly, deeply, let yourself feel a little closer to the breath of the earth. not just as something that fills your lungs, but as something you influence with every action and every choice. Because the flame doesn't need to roar, it can soften, and in that softening, the balance may yet hold. You lean back now, thoughts settling like ash after firelight, and in this quiet, a question begins to form, soft but persistent. If oxygen is so essential and so carefully balanced, can the Earth actually run out of it? Could it tip too far someday and fail to return? Let's walk gently into that question next. Let's follow it into the deeper breath of the planet itself. You lie back, your head soft against the pillow, your chest rising and falling like a tide. You don't think about the air, you just breathe. And yet, the question lingers quietly in the space between heartbeats. Can the Earth really run out of oxygen? It seems absurd. The sky is so big, the trees so many, the oceans so wide. You breathe without scarcity, without notice. How could something so endless ever end? But tonight, you and I will drift through the truth behind the question. Slowly, gently, we'll walk hand in hand with science. We'll trace the invisible threads of oxygen, not only in your lungs, but in oceans, in forests, in ancient stones. We'll pull apart the myths and listen closely to the whispers of the past. Let's begin not with fear, but with awe. Right now, about 21% of the air around you is oxygen. That number is stable, not perfect, but consistent enough for life to breathe easily. You're not floating in pure oxygen. That would be dangerous. You're gliding through a careful blend, mostly nitrogen, then oxygen, then trace gases like argon and carbon dioxide. But it's that 21% that keeps you alive, moment to moment. And here's the first quiet truth. The Earth does not make oxygen just for you. It makes it through living systems that have their own balance, their own rhythm. You are a participant, not the center. Most of the oxygen you breathe doesn't come from trees, though that's what we often believe. Trees are vital. Yes, they give us shade, roots, forests, and fresh air. But most of your oxygen comes from the ocean, from tiny drifting organisms called phytoplankton. These microscopic beings, floating near the surface, use sunlight to turn water and carbon dioxide into sugars and release oxygen as a byproduct. They are the lungs of the sea and of the sky. Now pause for a moment. Let yourself picture it. An endless blue ocean, its surface sparkling in the sun. Beneath it, a swirling galaxy of single-celled life, dancing upward, splitting light into breath. That is where most of your oxygen is born. But this system is delicate. Phytoplankton are sensitive to temperature, to acidity, to nutrients. When the ocean warms, as it is doing now, plankton populations shift. Some decline, and that leads to a soft, silent change in oxygen production. Meanwhile, on land, forests face their own challenges. Deforestation, wildfires, droughts. Each removes trees faster than new ones grow. Every tree is a quiet exhale of oxygen. Every forest, a living breath. When these vanish, we lose not just shade and soil, but part of the planet's balance. Still, the Earth is vast. Even with warming seas and shrinking forests, the air hasn't run out. Yet. So where does the fear come from? Let's take a gentle walk through time. Hundreds of millions of years ago, oxygen levels in Earth's atmosphere were not always the same. In fact, they've risen and fallen dramatically. Around 300 million years ago, during the Carboniferous period, oxygen levels were as high as 30 to 35%. That's nearly 50% more than today. What did that mean? Insects grew huge. Dragonflies with 2-foot wingspans floated through the forest canopy. Fires burned hotter and more easily. Oxygen made everything more combustible and more alive. Then, over time, oxygen levels fell. Volcanic eruptions, mass extinctions, shifting ecosystems, they all played a role. The balance changed, and once it nearly ended. Around 2.4 billion years ago, long before animals walked the earth, a major event occurred. It's called the Great Oxygenation Event. Before this, Earth's atmosphere had almost no oxygen. Then tiny organisms, cyanobacteria, began releasing it through photosynthesis. At first, this was revolutionary. But oxygen was poisonous to much of the life that had evolved in its absence. As oxygen levels rose, an extinction followed. Most anaerobic life that thrived without oxygen, was wiped out. A new kind of planet emerged, one where oxygen would become central to life. So yes, Earth can change its oxygen story. It has before. It could again. But will it? Now let's return to your breath. One inhale, one exhale. That oxygen entered your lungs just seconds ago, but its journey began years earlier, in a forest leaf or a bloom of plankton. It was part of a cycle, carbon in, oxygen out, a rhythm that connects all living things. Here's something important. Oxygen is not being used up. When you breathe it in, your body uses it to unlock energy from food. That process creates carbon dioxide, which you breathe out. But the oxygen isn't destroyed. It's transformed, temporarily, and eventually returns to the cycle. The Earth doesn't lose oxygen easily. Even when we burn fossil fuels, the oxygen binds with carbon to form carbon dioxide. That gas floats in the atmosphere, contributing to warming, but the oxygen still exists, just in a different form. So the real risk is not running out of oxygen entirely, but disrupting the systems that recycle it. Think of it like a loop. If one part breaks, say, if forests burn faster than they regrow, or oceans acidify and kill plankton, then oxygen production slows. The balance tilts. In extreme scenarios, oxygen levels could slowly drop. It wouldn't happen overnight. It would take centuries, even millennia. But in a worst-case future, one of rampant deforestation, collapsing marine ecosystems, and unchecked warming, oxygen levels could decline enough to impact life. Symptoms might begin subtly. Fatigue, headaches, lower performance in athletes, then workers, then everyone. High-altitude communities might suffer first, as thinner air becomes even thinner. Over generations, human bodies might adapt, like those living in the Andes or Himalayas, growing larger lungs, pumping more blood. And eventually, it could become a different kind of planet. But that is not where we are. Not yet. And not necessarily where we are headed. Because even now, even tonight, the Earth is still breathing. Forests are still growing. Phytoplankton are still blooming. And people, scientists, ecologists, conservationists, are working to protect the loops, to keep the breath moving. You are part of this, too. Every tree planted, every river protected, every voice raised. They all support the quiet machinery that keeps oxygen flowing. And perhaps most importantly, nature is resilient. Oxygen-producing life has survived asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, and global ice ages. It adapts. It endures. Still, awareness is not alarm. This question, can we run out of oxygen, is not meant to keep you awake with fear. It is meant to anchor you in awe, to remind you how connected everything is. Your breath, the ocean's currents, the warmth of a tree's sunlight-fed leaves. You breathe the sky, and the sky breathes with you. And so, as your eyes grow heavy, hold this gentle truth. Oxygen is not a guarantee, but it is a gift sustained by a world of living systems that hum and grow all around you. Every breath is a silent miracle. Every exhale, a whisper of your place in the web of life. Now let your breath soften. Let your thoughts drift. Because as you rest in this invisible sea of air, a new question begins to rise, quietly, from the ocean floor. What happens when oxygen isn't needed at all? What kind of life thrives in its absence? You lie still now, your body gently sinking into rest. The quiet around you mirrors the quiet within, a steady pulse, a soft rhythm, a hum beneath your skin. You may not feel it, but your blood is moving, always moving, carrying the breath you just took to places you'll never see. With every inhale, air brushes your lungs like a breeze through leaves. It fills tiny sacs called alveoli, little hollow grapes tucked at the ends of branching airways. And here, oxygen waits at a delicate edge. On the other side of a thin membrane, your blood arrives, rich in cells shaped like cushions, round and ready. These red blood cells stretch and fold to pass through the narrowest vessels, like canoes gliding through secret rivers. In a moment almost too small to notice, oxygen passes from air to blood, a soft handoff, a silent embrace. Hemoglobin, the protein inside red blood cells, holds out its iron arms and catches the oxygen like a dance partner. And now, this invisible molecule is no longer in the air. It's in you, traveling with you. You are a landscape of quiet highways, 60,000 miles of vessels, from great arteries to capillaries as fine as thread. Through each, your blood flows, not with the rush of a river, but with the intention of a messenger. Every beat of your heart pushes oxygen forward, 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 to the waiting cells in your muscles, your skin, your brain. Each one needs this breath. Each one remembers the last. The oxygen doesn't shout. It doesn't crash into place. It simply arrives. A molecule, or two, or three. It slips into a cell like light through curtains. Inside, it joins with sugar, with fuel, with tiny mitochondria, the quiet powerhouses humming at your core. Together, they make energy. Not loud or violent energy, but enough to keep your eyelids soft, your lungs rising, your thoughts turning gently as you fall asleep. All this from one breath, and another still. You may not realize it, but you carry the story of Earth's atmosphere in your chest. The same oxygen that once came from ancient oceans, from plankton drifting in sunlit waters, now fuels your body's quiet symphony. The air we breathe today is borrowed, made by forests, by algae, by a planet that breathes in harmony with us. Sometimes, your breath deepens without you asking. Maybe you sigh. Maybe your chest rises fuller than before. This isn't random. Your body listens constantly, adjusting its rhythm to what it needs. When your muscles are busy, oxygen is in high demand. When you rest, the need softens, but it never stops. Your brain, especially, is always thirsty for oxygen. Though it's small, it uses nearly 20% of the oxygen you take in. Every thought, every memory, every dream you drift into tonight depends on that quiet flow of red. And yet, oxygen isn't just a helper, it's also a risk. Too much of it, in the wrong place, can cause damage. Free radicals form, unstable molecules that scrape and scratch your cells like sparks in dry grass. That's why your body has defenses, antioxidants, enzymes, barriers. These are the guardians of the inner forest, keeping the flame gentle, never wild. You are not the only creature to carry this fire inside. Every bird, every whale, every sleeping cat beside a fireplace draws oxygen into its blood, letting it dance from lung to cell. It's a universal rhythm, shared across species, across time. Long before you were born, blood was carrying oxygen. Long after you're gone, it will continue. It is one of life's oldest promises. And this river of breath, of red and air, also speaks when you cannot. Doctors can measure oxygen levels to understand how you are. Pulse oximeters, those tiny clips on fingers, read the color of your blood, the way it absorbs light. They tell a story without words. How much air is reaching you, how well your body is doing the quiet work. Sometimes that story is interrupted. Illness, altitude, injury, all can shift the balance. When oxygen becomes scarce, you might feel dizzy, lightheaded, or tired. But your body knows how to adapt. It increases your breathing rate. It sends more red blood cells. At high altitudes, people who live in the mountains grow stronger lungs, thicker blood, their bodies tuned to thinner air. Even now, as you lie still and restful, your oxygen levels shift gently with each breath. Your body knows how to listen, how to adjust. There's wisdom in your chest, older than words, deeper than thought. And inside every red blood cell, the same tiny story unfolds. Oxygen arrives, oxygen leaves. Breath becomes fuel. Energy becomes life. It's a story without language, without drama, yet it never stops. Even as you sleep, this current flows. Tonight, as your heart slows and your thoughts quiet, imagine this inner journey. Picture your blood as a lazy river under moonlight, moving silently through a forest lit from within. The trees are your veins, the roots your capillaries, and the fireflies that drift between them. They are your oxygen molecules, glowing gently, giving life. And as one molecule finishes its task and slips away as carbon dioxide, another waits at the edge of your lungs, ready to begin the journey again. Breath in, breath out. The circle continues. So you ask, what does oxygen mean, really? It means life, yes, but also movement, memory, healing. It means the difference between stillness and vitality, between thought and silence. It is a thread woven through every moment of your day, even now, as your body softens into sleep. And just as oxygen moves within you, it moves beyond you, to the trees outside your window, to the ocean far away, to the algae swaying in unseen waters. You are not separate from them. You are part of this great, shared breath. And yet, what happens when oxygen is not so easily shared? What becomes of the systems, oceans, forests, balance? that make this quiet flow possible. As you drift towards sleep, your breath steady and deep, a question hovers gently, like a feather caught in air. If oxygen is so essential, so delicate, what happens when the world changes faster than the breath it needs? Let's drift there next. You lie back, the weight of your day falling away like sediment drifting to the bottom of a still lake. Your breath slows. Inhale, exhale soft and easy. You might imagine that all life needs this. Full lungs, rich air, deep breaths. But there are places where life barely breathes at all. Places where oxygen is so scarce it's more of a rumor than a resource. And yet, life goes on. Beneath the surface of the earth and the sea, in cracks, caves, and silent waters, organisms thrive where you might expect only emptiness. They live not in abundance, but in constraint. Not in ease, but in adaptation. Tonight, you drift with them. Picture a lake, still and deep. On the surface, sunlight sparkles, and the upper waters dance with life. Fish, insects, tiny plants floating like dust in the glow. But sink lower, deeper, and the light fades. The water grows cold and quiet. This is the hypolimnion, the bottom layer, where oxygen doesn't reach. Down here, no fresh air stirs. There is no wind to mix the surface with the deep. And yet, in these low oxygen waters, tiny creatures called anaerobic bacteria make their home. They do not breathe oxygen at all. Instead, they feed on other molecules, sulfur, nitrogen, even iron, turning them into energy in a slow, chemical symphony. You might think of oxygen as life's passport, but for these ancient beings, it's a poison. Oxygen would damage their inner workings. They evolved in a world without it, and in some quiet corners of Earth, they continue just as they have for billions of years. Now drift deeper still, not into water, but into stone. Beneath your feet, miles underground, the earth breathes in strange ways. Here, in the dark pockets of rock and mineral, scientists have discovered entire microbial communities, tiny cells clinging to life in environments that haven't seen sunlight in millions of years. In South Africa, researchers found life 2 miles below the surface in ancient gold mines. The water down there had been trapped for eons, untouched by surface air. Yet in its silence, bacteria survived by drawing energy from radioactive decay, using the byproducts of uranium breaking down in rock. No oxygen, no sunlight, and still life. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Breathing without breath, living without lungs. But you begin to see that life is not just a story of abundance. It's a story of resilience. These microbes are not thriving in spite of low oxygen. They're thriving because of it. They are built for it, carved by time to survive where others cannot. Now come closer to the ocean's edge, not the sunny beaches you know, but far, far below. The ocean floor is a map of extremes. And in the deep sea vents, where black smoke rises from cracks in the earth, the pressure would crush you, the heat would scald you, and the oxygen? Almost none. Yet here, in these alien places, life blooms in surreal beauty. Giant tube worms with blood-red plumes, ghostly fish with glassy eyes, crabs with hairy claws. These creatures depend not on oxygen, but on sulfur, spewed from the Earth's crust in superheated jets. Their partners are chemosynthetic bacteria, microbes that turn toxic chemicals into sustenance. The tube worms feed on nothing directly. Instead, they house these bacteria inside their bodies like secret chefs, converting poison into life. A partnership forged not in air, but in fire. And what of the fish? Some, like the ice fish of the Antarctic, live in such cold, oxygen-poor waters that their blood has no red cells at all. No hemoglobin. Their blood runs clear, a pale river that flows slowly through their veins. They survive by needing less, by moving slowly, by letting their environment shape their biology. You begin to understand, life adapts. It bends, shifts, reshapes itself like clay in the hands of time. Where oxygen is scarce, it becomes efficient. Where it's absent, life finds another way. And this is not just in remote corners of the world. Even inside your body, oxygen levels vary. Your muscles, when pushed hard, running, lifting, stretching, sometimes run out of oxygen temporarily. And so they switch gears. They use anaerobic respiration, briefly, to keep going. It's not as efficient. It builds up lactic acid, makes you feel sore. But it's a reminder, even within you, there are echoes of that ancient flexibility. And in the animal kingdom, some animals sleep through low oxygen. Turtles, during winter, bury themselves in mud beneath frozen ponds. For months, they barely breathe. Their metabolism slows to a whisper. Their heart rate drops, sometimes just one beat every 10 minutes. They survive by letting go, by embracing stillness. Like you, lying still now, suspended in thought and breath. Then there are animals like the naked mole rat, a small, blind rodent that lives underground in East Africa. Its burrows are stuffy and oxygen poor, but it doesn't mind. Its body is adapted to low oxygen, even capable of switching to a plant-like form of energy production when oxygen disappears. Not quite photosynthesis, but close enough to remind us how strangely resourceful biology can be. Even some fish, like the crucian carp, can survive under ice without oxygen for days, even weeks. They convert energy into alcohol, which they release through their gills, essentially becoming little underwater brewers to stay alive. And so, you see, the question of oxygen is not so simple. It's not just about presence or absence. It's about how life responds. In every crevice of the planet, from boiling vent to icy tomb, life has found ways to endure the silence of oxygen's absence. This has big implications, too. When scientists look for life beyond Earth, on Mars or Europa or Titan, they don't just look for air. They look for chemistry, for water, for warmth, because they know that life doesn't always need oxygen to begin. Oxygen is precious, yes, but it's not the only breath that life knows. Now you lie here, surrounded by invisible abundance. Air all around, in every room, every breath, every pause. But as you close your eyes, remember, not all life gets this gift. Some learn to live on almost nothing. Some survive in silence. And still they endure. You are part of that story, too. Not separate, but connected. Your blood and breath evolved from those ancient, oxygen-free beginnings. You carry the memory of that resilience inside you, the quiet strength to adapt. And so, tonight, as you sleep, know that life, your life, is flexible. It flows, bends, waits. Even when the air grows thin, the spark remains. In the next chapter, we'll rise gently from the depths and turn our gaze forward. We'll ask, what does Earth's future air look like? And will generations to come still breathe as easily as you do now? You lie still, your breath slow and quiet. The room is dark, but your thoughts float gently, like leaves drifting on a calm stream. Above you, the invisible sky cradles every breath you take, a mix of gases, timeless yet trembling. And now, a quiet question arises. Will this air always be here? Will our children breathe the same sky? To wonder about the future of Earth's air is to trace the threads of today into tomorrow's weave. You begin with what is already changing, not in some far-off time, but now, in this very age of breath. The air you breathe comes mostly from the dance of life, from forests that stretch their leafy arms to the sun, and oceans that shimmer with tiny plankton, unseen but mighty. These living systems work like lungs, drawing in carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen back into the world. It's a cycle as old as trees and just as fragile. But this balance is shifting. Forests, especially the great rainforests like the Amazon, are thinning. Fires, some natural, many not, consume vast swaths of greenery. In their place, the soil dries, the air grows warmer, and the trees that once breathed for us fall silent. Each tree lost is a whisper faded from the world's chorus of oxygen. At the same time, the oceans are warming. A warmer ocean holds less oxygen, just as a warm soda loses its fizz. In some parts of the sea, vast stretches are becoming dead zones, places where oxygen is so low that few creatures can survive. Plankton, the unseen heroes of the atmosphere, begin to struggle. Their numbers falter, and with them, the sky grows ever so slightly quieter. But this is not the end of the story. It is the middle, the moment when awareness meets possibility. You might wonder, can the Earth really run out of oxygen? The answer is layered. The total amount of oxygen on Earth is immense. It is stored not only in the air, but in rocks, water, and living things. But the available oxygen, the kind you can breathe, depends on the balance between creation and consumption. And right now, that balance wobbles. Burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, consumes oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. Every engine that turns, every flame that flickers, draws a little more from the shared well of breathable air. In small doses, it's manageable. But when billions do it, every day, for decades, the system begins to sigh. Still, hope is not lost. Not even close. All across the planet, people are waking up to the breath of the earth. Scientists study the rhythms of air, tracking its movements, its chemistry, its subtle shifts. They know where the problems begin, and they are beginning to offer solutions. Solar panels gleam on rooftops, pulling power from the sun without a single gasp of smoke. Wind turbines turn with the sky, harvesting energy without a flame. Electric vehicles glide through cities, whisper quiet, leaving no soot behind. These are not just inventions. They are promises that we can live differently and still live well. Reforestation efforts are planting hope, one seedling at a time. Forests in Europe, Africa, and Asia are being restored, not to what once was, but to something that might be again. Each tree is a future breath, a filter for the sky, a stitch in the planet's healing quilt. And the oceans, too, are not forgotten. Marine protected areas, coral restoration projects, and new research into phytoplankton health all work together to keep the sea's lungs open. Even seaweed farms, vast underwater gardens, are being explored as ways to soak up carbon and gently exhale oxygen back into the world. You see, the story of the Earth's air is not just a tale of crisis. It is also a lesson in resilience. Nature, when allowed to breathe, heals quickly. Forests regrow, air clears, water cools. What's needed most is space and time for the world to recover, and the courage, collectively, to step aside from the old fires and towards the light. And so, as you lie here, breathing in the quiet, you become part of this future too. The choices you make ripple outward. Small, yes, but never powerless. Riding a bike instead of a car. Eating more plants and fewer processed things. Supporting leaders who listen to the science. Planting a tree, even if it's just a seed in a pot on your windowsill. You are one breath among billions, but every breath counts. And the earth, for all its changes, is listening. Even the air itself tells you a truth. It is shared. The oxygen you breathe tonight might have come from a forest in South America or a wave that broke in the Arctic Sea. And one day, the air you exhale may feed a leaf, a bird, or a child not yet born. That is the wonder of it all, this quiet connection. You, the trees, the oceans, the skies, all part of one living breath. And so, the question is no longer just, will our children breathe the same sky? But also, what can we do now so they can breathe it freely, fully, and forever? Your mind begins to soften around the edges of this thought. You picture the future, not as a warning, but as a wide field of possibility. A world where the cities are quieter, the air is cleaner, and every child learns not just math and language, but how to listen to the breath of the earth. A future where science is not separate from feeling, but guided by it. You drift now, imagining green rooftops and blue waters, solar fields humming softly in the sun. You imagine young lungs filling with clean air, laughter under tall trees, plankton glowing once again in seas full of life. And as your thoughts begin to dim like the fading glow of twilight, one more question arrives, feather soft and curious. How did this breath begin? Let's follow that thread, back through time, to the very edge of oxygen's birth, back to when the world was stone and the sky was not yet blue, back to a time before breath. You take a breath. It feels small, a quiet inhale at the edge of sleep. But in that single breath, you carry the memory of forests, oceans, and even ancient life. The oxygen entering your lungs is not new. It is old and shared, ancient and borrowed. Tonight, as your body slows and your mind begins to drift, you become part of a story that is both deeply personal and unimaginably vast. The story of air, of breath, and of all the lives it touches. Your breath begins in the trees. Not just the ones you walk past each day, but the great breathing forests of the Amazon, the Congo, and the boreal north. Each leaf is like a tiny lung, drawing in carbon dioxide and exhaling oxygen into the world. This process is gentle, rhythmic, powered by light, rooted in soil. When sunlight hits a leaf, it stirs a quiet alchemy, photosynthesis. In this green miracle, plants take sunlight, water, and air and turn them into sugars and oxygen. The sugars feed the plant. The oxygen, it becomes yours. You may be lying in a bedroom in a city far from the jungle, but the air you breathe carries a botanical signature, a whisper from a canopy thousands of miles away. But trees are not the only authors of air. Much of your oxygen comes from the sea. Beneath the waves, drifting with the currents, are trillions of microscopic beings called phytoplankton. They are so small, you can't see them. But taken together, they create half the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. Floating like specks of emerald dust, phytoplankton use sunlight just as trees do. In their glowing, miniature dance, they release oxygen bubble by bubble, and those bubbles rise to the surface, merge with the wind, and slowly become part of your breath. It's humbling, isn't it? To realize that the air in your lungs may have once passed through a kelp forest, or been exhaled by a whale, or danced with clouds above the Pacific. Air is always moving. It doesn't stay still, and it doesn't belong to one person or place. It travels, carried by jet streams, twisted by storms, kissed by mountaintops. The breath you take now might have circled the globe. It may have brushed the surface of a glacier, stirred above the Sahara, or passed through the lungs of a tiger sleeping in the grass. And just as it comes to you, it leaves you, carrying warmth, moisture, and carbon on its way back into the world. Breathing is not a solo act. It's a cycle, an unbroken loop between you and everything alive. You exhale carbon dioxide. That gas will feed a plant, which will make oxygen, which will feed another breath, yours, or someone else's, or something else's. Even the trees are in conversation with you. When you walk through a forest and breathe deeply, you're not just enjoying the fresh scent of pine or damp soil. You're participating in a chemical handshake, a quiet exchange of gifts. Your breath is not yours alone. It links you to the past as well. The air around you contains atoms older than the earth itself. Some of the oxygen you inhale may have once filled the lungs of a mammoth. Some might have brushed the wings of a prehistoric dragonfly or surged through the chest of a Neanderthal watching the stars. In this way, oxygen is a kind of memory, not held in photographs or journals, but in molecules, in motion. You're part of a living lineage, connected not just to other people, but to every creature that has ever taken in air. To breathe is to share. To breathe is to belong. And the cycle doesn't end at life. Even in decay, oxygen has a role. It helps return fallen leaves to soil, drives the quiet burn of compost, feeds the microbes that break down what once lived. Oxygen is not just about staying alive. It's about the full arc of life, from birth to breath to letting go. It is present in creation and in return. As you lie here, still and soft, you may notice how your breath slows, deepens. You may feel it like a tide, in, out, each wave gentle, each exhale like a feather released into the sky. Some days, it's easy to forget this connection. We spend our lives indoors, behind windows and screens, rushing through air-conditioned corridors, rarely stopping to feel the sky in our lungs. But the truth is, your breath is a thread that ties you to the wider world. Even if you never leave your room, you are still touching the ocean, still hearing the forests, still brushing the wings of migrating birds. There is no such thing as your air. It is our air, and not just ours, as in people, but ours, as in whales and mosses, bees and lichen, wolves and frogs. Breathing is community. It's invisible, but it's real. And because of this shared breath, what we do to our planet matters. When forests fall, the balance shifts. When oceans warm, phytoplankton shrink. When we burn too much, extract too deep, push too fast, we strain the cycle. We thin the thread. But knowing that we are part of this system, this breath chain, this web of air, also gives us power. Each tree planted is a breath banked for the future. Each policy to protect the seas is a vote for oxygen. Each act of care, however small, echoes in the lungs of tomorrow. So tonight, you can rest not just as a dreamer, but as a part of something larger than yourself. Not separate from nature, but breathing with it. Inhale and feel the sea. Exhale and nourish the green. Inhale again and know you belong. Let this final breath tonight be a soft gratitude for the trees, for the plankton, for the winds, for the creatures whose lungs once moved the same air. And as sleep draws near, a gentle question floats forward like mist. If our breath binds us to the living world, what else connects us silently, beautifully, beneath the surface of things? Tomorrow, perhaps, you'll drift with that question back into the oceans where oxygen was born, or into the dark, quiet places where life still thrives with barely a breath. But for now, just breathe, and know that the world is breathing with you.